God asks the question of Adam, where are you? Where are you? God is not asking because he doesn't know. He's asking because it is important that when mankind fall into sin, that they recognize where they are. If you don't confess it, if you don't admit it, then you won't seek restoration or reconciliation back to God. So when your sin causes you to hide and God is wondering where you are, remember, it's not for God, it's for you. Blessings abound. The beautiful thing is that God had already planned the fix before the foundation of the world. Mankind falling into sin was not a surprise to God. It was not a shocker. He had already prepared that Jesus Christ would be the one who would redeem mankind back to God. We believe in fixing situations that are broken. Plumbers, roofers, redoing tests, all of these things to fix what we failed or fix what has been broken. God, the ultimate fixer, in sending Jesus Christ. You don't have to stay in sin because God already fixed it for you. Accept Jesus and receive restoration to our God. Blessings abound. You know, we live in a time where we hear phrases like, you can't judge me, or only God can judge me, or you shouldn't judge. Well, the whole Bible is about God's standard. The very fact that Adam and Eve had to meet up with God's standard or be expelled from the garden means that God takes note of how you approach him, the condition of your soul. It matters. So rather than waiting before you stand before God, make your calling and election sure now. At the great white throne judgment, it will be too late. God shows you his standard by his word. Align your life according to that standard, and then you shall live with God in eternity. Blessings abound. When Adam fell and Adam and Eve now were living in sin, they tried to cover themselves. They made a covering out of fig leaves. Well, any covering that we can make is a temporary covering. There is an eternal covering that they had before the fall. That covering was the glory of God, the presence of God himself. That's why God could come down and commune with them. He covered them. Yet when sin entered into the picture, God doesn't take you as you are. You have to be holy and righteous, aiming to be as God is. When you fall into sin and you don't repent, there are consequences. You no longer get to stay in the presence of God. You can't cover yourself like God can cover you. Sin and be left to your own consequences. Go for sanctification and God will receive you. Blessings abound. Just some advice. I remember as a teenager, my pastor made a statement. It has stayed with me all my life. He said, you can never miss what you never had. And that really encouraged me not to indulge in sin, because then you would pine for it. Then you would have awakened your sensuality and you would want to experience it again and again. So you don't have to experience sin to understand it will separate you from God. Don't start what has been designed to separate you from God. Blessings abound. Once you begin to play with sin, fall into sin, commit sin, it changes you. That's what happened with Adam and Eve. No longer were they naked and it didn't matter. Now they were naked and ashamed. Why? Because while they initially were naked, they were covered by the glory of God. Now that they had sinned, They were void of that covering. That's why God saw them. He saw them uncovered in the wrong way. You don't have to be uncovered. God can cover you. Confess your sin, reconcile with God by Jesus Christ, and you can make your way back into his presence, knowing that one day you will live with him in eternity. So you don't have to stay in the shape that you're in. The potter, God can put you back together again. Blessings abound. What I find interesting is that when God asked Eve concerning her sin, she spoke truth. She said, the serpent beguiled me and I ate. I got charmed. I got snaked. She spoke the truth. And because of that, I believe it made way for that reconciliation, the road to reconciliation. Your sin does not have to keep you permanently out of the presence of God. Confess it and then receive the consequences of it, and know that you can be reconnected back to God. Blessings abound. God talked to Adam. He asked him two questions. Who told you you were naked? And did you eat of the tree that I told you not to? Adam never answered the question. He never took responsibility. That's what sin will do. It will cause you to pass the buck or pass the ball or to place the blame on someone else. Adam bailed rather than standing up as a man and saying, I did it. I was the one. I knew that fruit belonged on that tree and I still ate of it. He began to make excuses. Don't excuse yourself out of the presence of God. Out of the presence of God is another world. And that's the world that we now live in. Let's aim to get back to the Garden of Eden, to God's presence. Blessings abound. So the serpent, Lucifer, walked on 2 feet. Remember, Lucifer in heaven, he walked among the fiery stones. So Lucifer knew about the fire of God, the presence of God. Yet, because he used this knowledge and he enticed the woman to take up the fruit, and the man then ate the fruit from the woman, God deals with him. You used to walk, but now you're going to slither. You shall have your belly on the dust. Yep. You shall slither on that which is lifeless. Dust is lifeless. So whereby Lucifer, Satan, the devil, the serpent of old, he was coming after the life of Adam and Eve, their life that was in the presence of God. God said, you're not going to have life. You can do all you want. You will never have the life that was designed for those who decide to live holy, the standard of God. Blessings abound. And so the woman, her consequence is that she will have to be submissive to her husband. She's going to have children. She's going to have children in sorrow, and she's going to have a lot of children. This means that no longer should she even have time to be distracted by a serpent. She will be busy serving her husband and taking care of the children. Well, we've gone a long ways from that. We are the working men to take care of the women while we have the children and just cook and enjoy being home. Well, that's not how it is right now. Yet, it was the plan of God. We've moved far away from God's plan, and the world is not better for it. Blessings abound. Because Adam relinquished his responsibility, the punishment or the consequences of Adam is you will be responsible. Rather than you saying the woman made you do it and trying to blame God, you will take responsibility and you will have to work the ground. You will have to labor. The ground that is cursed, it's going to cause some hard labor. That's why it's very much anti-Bible when we encourage people to go on welfare when they can work. When we encourage people to sit home and receive a check from government when they can work. As a man is not supposed to, in his full health and full strength, sit home and be taken care of by a mama or by a woman. That's not of God. If we don't do it God's way, we will not make our way back to God. Blessings abound. We must understand that God has a standard. And it is one of the worst things to do, to encourage others they can do anything they want anyway. God believes in being covered. How do we know that? Because the first thing that happened when mankind sinned, they went and covered themselves. So we live in a time when people are being uncovered. The flesh is showing. This is not God. It's not of God. It's not God's way. It's not God's pattern. Why not? Because it builds up a sensuality. It builds up the eros. And we need to walk in the agape of God. And so let's cover up. No, let's not cover up our sin. Let's cover up our flesh and the sensuality that will drive us to sin. God has a standard. He shows it to us in the book of Genesis. Let's live thereby. Blessings abound.